This story begins with a foreboding atmosphere. The sky is painted in hues of fiery orange and red as crows perch on barren tree branches, their cries echoing in the silence, caw caw. The scene shifts to a tragic sight. Two lifeless figures lie on the ground, surrounded by a pool of blood. The air is heavy with silence, speaking volumes of the grim fate that has befallen them. Amidst a crowd's roaring anger, a voice exclaims in outrage, "How dare a duke harm the empress?" Another declares, "The House of Valua will forever be a disgrace to the four great houses of the Empire of Rolls." The scene focuses on a woman standing boldly, her presence commanding attention as the enraged crowd cries out in unison, "Rhea!" A beautiful girl adorned in an elegant and expensive gown steps forward. A boy from the crowd points his finger at her and shouts, "She's wearing an expensive gown even when she's going to bite the dust." Her confident steps echo through the tense air, but suddenly, her foot halts. The moment freezes as all eyes are drawn to her. She sits and pulls her dress. A part of her gown tears and falls into the boy's hand. "Ajij," he cries. The murmurs grow louder, "Die. Kill her." The lady smirks and declares, "I specifically tossed you a piece of my gown that has amethyst sewn into it. Why are you being so ungrateful? You crazy B***T." The boy shouts in fury. Another voice erupts from the crowd. "Her clothing is a curse. Don't let it touch you." She lifts her gaze toward the sky, watching the crows soaring above, their caws filling the air. With a sigh, she whispers, "Am I fated to die when I haven't done anything wrong?" Her voice trembles as she continues, "Duke Cassius of the House of Valua. The heartless demon who made people tremble in fear. And my father. I was born as his daughter. But we had never shared a proper conversation." Her expression darkens. "If I had helped him perform his evil misdeeds, I wouldn't feel this wronged about being put to death. Why did I have to be born as his daughter?" She turns to him, equally startled. The boy's voice drips with disdain. "The man who had unfortunate parents like I did." His tone hardens. "These are your final moments." Stepping closer, he sneers, "Do all Valuas have no emotions? I had hoped to see regret etched on your face before you were executed." They lock eyes for a moment. The boy leans in and says, "The investigations revealed that you had nothing to do with the actions of Duke Cassius." His next words are laced with a cruel kindness. "I can alter your sentence if you kneel before me now. You won't be able to avoid death, but drinking poison will be far less painful." VILISIA places a hand over her heart and whispers, "Just kill me." The boy's eyes widen in disbelief. From the crowd, an outraged voice shrieks, "Did you see how rude she was to His Majesty the Emperor?" Another yells, "Don't act so haughty when you're the daughter of a demon." The blonde-haired boy shakes his head in disappointment. "I thought that you'd have noble etiquette as a member of one of the four great houses. But you're just a lunatic who lacks discernment." Her voice is steady as she replies, "A person's status means nothing in the face of death." She smirks, glancing at the furious crowd. "Consider these lowly peasants daring to bark at a Valua like rabid dogs. Who would have ever imagined such a thing?" The boy clenches his fists. "Indeed, your life is meaningless." He draws his sword, his voice echoing with finality. "I'll end it quickly." VILISIA grips her dress, her breath hitching as she stares at him. Her eyes widen, then she closes them, accepting her fate. "I believe that this was my last. Until I opened my eyes in the spirit realm." Darkness swirls around her. "I always return to this place after my death." A cold realization settles over her. The spirit realm, where all of the characters end up once they're dead. She clenches her fists. "Whenever I come back here, I realize that I'm a mere character in a story that has already been fully written." Her voice shakes. "Every person in my world is a character in a story created by God." She exhales sharply. "We're separated by main characters and extras." Her tone turns bitter. "Main characters can write the story of their lives in any way they want, but extras can't." Her voice wavers with frustration. "They can't say what they want, and are forbidden from making any attempt to break out of the confines of the storyline. Extras are forced to devotedly live the roles that they were made for. And those who endlessly repeat such lines are called professional extras." A grim smile tugs at her lips. "I too am a soul whose job is a professional extra." Her voice is a whisper now. "The villain's daughter. The 99th villain's daughter. VILISIA Valua. The villain's daughter. Valua. Vicious. Nasty temper. Ding." She stares blankly ahead. "Regardless of having lived countless lives, my role has always been the villain's daughter." Her voice breaks. "Whenever I tried to perform a good deed, tears prick her eyes. I couldn't act the way I wanted." She trembles. "I spat out words that I didn't want to say. Valua cried out. You filthy wench! Her voice cracking with rage. And did things that I didn't want to do. It agonized me, burning through her chest like an unrelenting fire. Unable to understand why, she covered her one eye with her hand and thought, why am I acting like this? I lived out a life in which I couldn't do anything out of my own free will and only regained all of my memories when I returned to the spirit realm as I had now. She caught her hand mid-motion and sighed. In any case, this life was the hardest one out of all my previous lives. Her voice quivered with frustration. She had never even spoken with her supposed dad because he had been too obsessed with the heroine's mother. Thanks to that, she was known as the Forsaken Lady. So VILISIA grew up alone, like an abandoned child. If Cassius had been obsessed with me, his daughter, then our entire house probably wouldn't have been put to death. She shook her hand, sighing in frustration, and muttered, UGH, what am I saying? A villain wouldn't be a villain if he were a doting father. That would warp the original story. Only the main characters are allowed to twist the story, not extras. VILISIA clenched her fists tightly. Occasionally, some received the mercy of God, a chance to regress, but that was only given to the main characters. She was a professional extra. That's something a professional extra like me can't even dream of. But at the very least, even I, VILISIA blinked in surprise. Ha! Am I? Moving on to my next life already? She gasped. But it's so soon. Is it because it's my 100th life? Suddenly, her eyes widened and she said, then. A wave of panic surged through her as she squeezed her hand, silently thinking, please don't let me be lonely in this life. She nodded, her eyes blinking as she thought, wait, why am I not an infant? Or rather, the fact that I know that I'm not an infant is strange to begin with. I have black hair like before. She thought, pausing at the odd realization. Like before. Suddenly, a lady came to her, shouting in irritation, good grief. What are you doing, sitting there like an idiot? She shouted, you need TO work, TO earn your worth since we're feeding you. What on earth is wrong with you? Valua looks toward the woman and thinks, she looks really familiar. She said, Alice. Before VILISIA could process the words, Alice slapped her face, hard and screamed, did you eat something wrong for breakfast? How dare you say my name with that mouth? Alice shouted, her voice trembling with fury. VILISIA blinked, shocked. Is she really Alice, the head maid? VILISIA thought. Why is this nasty woman who used to torment me in my previous life here? The memories came flooding back, making me trip, pulling my hair. VILISIA looked fearful, her heart racing. Why is she here in this life again? That doesn't make sense. VILISIA turned away, her mind whirling with confusion. Wait, it can't be. She glanced around, wide-eyed, and thought, is this the Viscounty of Ilion? She saw two servants, their backs turned as they worked. Dry black hair and loose, ragged servant clothes. Impossible. VILISIA stared at her own hair in shock. Have I returned to my previous life? In a daze, she asked the maid standing nearby, who am I? The maid sneered. Who do you think you are? You'd better not be pretending to be insane because you don't want to clean VILISIA. Or did you forget your name too? VILISIA froze, her mind in chaos, and thought, have I truly regressed? Ishtu, my childhood began by living in hiding with my mom Vivian. Fearing her husband Cassius's twisted obsession, she escaped from Valua Castle even though she knew she was pregnant. She fled to Viscount Thrak and asked for his help. However, we were treated as less than commoners during our stay in his estate. And right now, I've regressed to the period when we lived in Viscount Thrak's estate. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I've regressed? I thought only main characters could do that. But for some reason, I know that I'm in a story. I murmured, and that I'm a professional extra. Someone suddenly stepped forward. What's all this ruckus? The maid flinched. My lord, she stammered. I told the child to mop the floors, but she wouldn't listen. The lord's expression darkened. What? She wouldn't do as she was told. Yes, my lord. I was in the middle of educating her. The lord's piercing gaze turned to me. Is that true, VILISIA? He continued, his voice cold. I was kind enough to take you in when you had nowhere to go. I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. I can't believe I'm seeing this cursed Viscount right after I woke up. I had always started my lives as a baby. Does this mean I've truly regressed? I've done what only the main characters are allowed to do. The one opportunity to choose one's own fate, the mercy of God. I pinched my cheek and yelped. Ow, this isn't a dream. The Lord narrowed his eyes. What's wrong with her? Has she lost her mind? He turned to Alice. She's been like that for a while now. What would you do, Alice? Alice bowed. If a child doesn't do as she's told, then she must be punished, my lord. Exactly. I flinched. Punished. The Lord's voice was final. Take her to solitary confinement and lock her up until she becomes a good little girl. My breath hitched. Am I going to be locked in solitary confinement again? Why? Why do I have to be locked up again without food or water? If my life is going to happen as the original story intends anyway, then Daddy will come here to find Mommy. It's true that he's fated to die as well, but I need him right now. I clenched my fists, summoning all my courage. Do you know who I am? The Lord arched a brow. What was that? I rose, dusting myself off, and shouted with fury. I said, do you know who my daddy is? How dare you treat me like a slave? Although our house is brought to ruin later, it's still one of the 4 great houses right now. I'm the daughter of the House of Valua. Bring me my daddy right this instant. I demanded. The maid gasped. Please forgive me, my lady, huh? She turned to another servant. Is a noble family visiting today? No. Viscount Threk is the only noble here today, the servant replied. The Lord smirked. You can yap all you want, little pup. You are of noble blood after all. I glared at him. Viscount, how dare you treat a Valua this way? He sneered. But guess what, little brat? Are you truly a part of the House of Valua? His finger jabbed my forehead and I stumbled back. Ow, the Lord chuckled. Ah, I barely touched you, but you fell over anyway. I'll treat you like a noble if that's what you want. But did you know that nobles who run away from their homes are considered less than peasants? I shivered at his words. Don't tell me that you believe that inhumane Duke will come looking for you, the Lord taunted. That's never going to happen. I gritted my teeth. No, he'll be here soon, and you're going to die. It's the second time I'm living this life. Hearing this, his face twisted in fury. He grabbed me by my clothes and snarled, I feed you and give you a roof over your head. He slammed me onto the ground. How much more kindness do I have to show to a half-breed who's neither a noble nor a peasant? Take her to the disciplinary chamber. Which one, my lord? The maid asked hesitantly. The one where her mother is. Where else? My blood ran cold. My mom had never been sent to a disciplinary chamber before, except for one day, the day she died. Thunder rumbled outside as 2 guards dragged me away. They threw me onto the cold floor and slammed the door shut. One guard scoffed. We don't have to bring her any food, so let's just come back here in 5 days. The other muttered, even the great house of Valua is rotten to the core, huh? The Duke is rampaging all over the Empire of Rolls, but the wife and kid he should be looking after are locked up in solitary. I curled up in fear, my heart pounding. My eyes darted around the dimly lit chamber, then they landed on a familiar, frail figure lying in the corner, covered in tattered clothes. Mommy! I gasped, rushing to her. I trembled as I reached out, pulling the cloth away from her face. My breath caught in my throat. And Mommy! Tears spilled down my cheeks. I rested my head on her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. I thought regressing was supposed to be the mercy of God. Thunder roared outside. Rain poured against the stone walls. Mommy! I screamed, my cries echoing in the chamber. Then, a shadow loomed over me. My breath hitched. I murmured, why do I have to go through this again? Ha! I turned sharply. Who's there? A silhouette stepped forward. I gasped. He's blonde. I faltered, my mind racing. The male lead who killed me, Petre. He was around my age too. No. Just because that boy is blonde doesn't mean that it's the same person. I trembled. It doesn't make sense for Petre to be in this place. I swallowed hard and asked, what's your name? He stared at me and replied, my name is Sion. I'm Sion. She was surprised to hear Sion. She said then, your eyes. She suddenly shouted, what color are your eyes? But he remained silent. VILISIA thought, why isn't he saying anything? Fine, I'll check his eyes myself. She rushed towards him, brushing his hair away from his face. She was shocked to see his black eyes. Black? She thought. His eyes are black. He flinched, quickly covering them with his hand. VILISIA nervously said, I am sorry for touching you without permission. She thought Petre has golden eyes. It isn't him, huh? Hang on, she muttered. I'm sorry. Did I just say that I was sorry? She asked, hey, are you locked up in here too? She thought, huh? I know how to be worried for someone else. I had never been able to control the words that came out of my mouth, even if I wanted to be nice. Is this all possible because I've regressed? She asked, did you defy the Viscount too? She stared at him, but he hesitated and remained silent. He laid down on the ground. VILISIA sighed. Well, that's how I got locked up in here. She slumped down, glancing at him with a questioning expression. He trembled slightly. She stood up. What's wrong? Are you sick? He shuddered and muttered. No, VILISIA frowned. But you seem really unwell. She raised her hand towards him, but he suddenly stood up, growling. Her expression shifted. Then she chuckled. Are you hungry? You sure sound like it. It's my chance to do a good deed. She pulled something from her pocket. Here, she beamed. Thank your lucky stars. I kept this piece of bread safe and sound. She thought, it's a secret that this is the first time in my 100 lives. The first good deed since regressing, but he shook his head. I don't want it. I can't pay you back. She thought, seriously? I'm trying to be a nice person for the first time in my lives. She insisted, here, take it. Please? I'm allergic to chocolate, so I can't eat it anyway, but he said I don't care. Throw it away. She thought, do I have to be mean in this life too? Being nice isn't easy, huh? She grabbed his hand, pulled it toward her, and shoved the bread into his mouth. Oops. I threw it away in your mouth. What a shame. I can't eat that now. He muttered, you can't go back on your word and say that I have to repay you. She thought, It's nice to see him eat so well. Geez. He won't even say thank you. But still, doing something nice for someone feels pretty good. After a moment, he stood up and asked, what's your name? She replied, VILISIA. Vili, my sweet little girl Vili. I had never received a love such as hers, and I had never been called by a pet name as tenderly. She squeezed her mother, remembering. Mommy. Sion hesitated. Your mother. She replied, she's going to sleep forever. He fidgeted, remaining silent. VILISIA said, don't say you're sorry for my loss. I'm going to discard this garbage of a life and begin anew. I have a feeling that I'll be able to live a different life than the previous ones. That night, she slept beside her mother. She blinked her eyes open for a moment before drifting back to sleep. A little later, she woke up, rubbing her eyes. Sion, but Sion was gone. She murmured, did he escape from solitary? She glanced around. How did he? Suddenly, a loud noise erupted. Her eyes widened as the stones shifted, tumbling toward her. She fell back, slumping onto the ground. Pain racked her body and she shouted, ARGH. A voice called out, Viviani. VILISIA gasped. That voice. Could it be the head of the house of the Duke of Valua? Cassius Valua. He stepped forward toward VILISIA's mother. Vivian. Open your eyes. Tears slipped down his face. He shouted, please, I'm begging you. Wake up, Vivian. Her hand flopped to the ground. His heart stopped for a moment. VILISIA thought, who was it? Cassius demanded, who killed Vivian? He stepped toward VILISIA, his gaze piercing. I asked you. Who killed Vivian? VILISIA recalled another memory, my horrible 29th father. And thus, the main villain was born once again. VILISIA felt a sharp pain in her chest. I can't breathe. She trembled, struggling to steady herself. Her thoughts swirled with anger and sorrow. You can take out your anger on me all you want, but that won't bring Mommy back. Cassius froze momentarily, his cold expression faltering. The commander of the Duke's Knights, Imoen, stepped forward and bowed deeply. Your Grace, Eamon said, his voice steady. What shall we do about this child? Cassius turned his face away, as if the sight of VILISIA was beneath his concern. I don't care. Eamon hesitated, shock flickering across his face. VILISIA's heart clenched. I knew it. Daddy doesn't recognize me this time either. Eamon's the one who recognized me first again. Cassius lifted Vivian's frail body into his arms, his voice cold and commanding. Search the estate. VILISIA staggered forward, her face burning with rage. Dummy. Stupid idiot. Moron. Her voice cracked as she shouted, you said that you loved Mommy, but you didn't even know where she was. What took you so long? Tears burned at the corners of her eyes as her small fists trembled. You should have at least gotten here on time if you'd been so obsessed with running after her. Cassius paused mid-step and turned to face her, his amber eyes narrowing. It appears you know how to talk. I thought you were a mute. Without waiting for a response, he repeated, let's begin searching the estate. Eamon frowned, stepping forward. Your Grace, I do not believe that is what is important at the moment. His voice grew firm as he pressed on. Do you not find the child's hair and eye color familiar? Did you not hear the way she called Madame Vivian Mommy? For a brief moment, silence filled the air. Then with an indifferent tone, Cassius said, take her with us for now and do a blood test. Eamon extended his hand toward her. Please come with me, my lady. VILISIA hesitated, her body aching from exhaustion. She limped forward, brushing off his offer to carry her. They moved through the cold stone corridors until they reached the underground storage room hidden in a secret passageway. The soldiers saluted Cassius as the heavy iron doors creaked open. He stepped inside, still holding Vivian's limp body. His voice sliced through the air like a blade. Viscount. Alice, the estate's caretaker, knelt on the floor trembling. Why, your Grace? It seems that there has been a misunderstanding. Cassis's gaze turned lethal. A misunderstanding? His voice was low and dangerous. Alice stammered. When the madam arrived and told me that she wished to stay here, she was in a terrible state. Nobody who saw her would have imagined that she was a noblewoman, so how could I know that she was your wife, your grace? VILISIA's fists clenched. What? That's an outrageous lie. Mommy even gave him a brooch with the Black Panther that represents the House of Valua. Alice's voice grew more desperate. I am the one who took in an unidentified woman, put a roof over her head, and gave her food to eat. Cassis stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. An unidentified woman? His tone dripped venom. Fine. Let's pretend that you never saw the sketches of Vivian that I scattered all over the empire. In a swift, merciless motion, he grabbed Alice by the hair and forced him to meet his eyes. Let's also pretend that you didn't recognize this brooch, he said, pulling the panther emblem from his coat, the one Vivian gave you when she asked you to take her in. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. Have you truly never heard that I was scouring the empire to find my wife? Alice's face drained of color. That's. VILISIA's voice cut through his stammering. You knew, she shouted. But you kept it a secret on purpose. Her words poured out in a fierce torrent. All because you've always had bad feelings toward the House of Valua. You didn't give Mommy medicine when she was sick, and you made me work like a slave. Her voice cracked with fury. And you even locked me and Mommy up in solitary. Sweat dripped from Alice's forehead as he scrambled for words. That is not true, your grace. The child is only 5 years old, so she has misconstrued the things she experienced at this estate. Cassis tossed him to the ground like discarded trash. Valuans always give exactly what they get. His gaze darkened as he turned toward VILISIA. If you are indeed a Valua, then choose how to punish the Viscount yourself. VILISIA blinked in surprise. Ha! Eamon's eyes widened. Your grace! Alice's mind raced as he seized his chance. He bowed low, his voice trembling with false humility. Please forgive me, your grace. I deserve to die, but if you must punish me through VILISIA, I shall gladly accept. He smirked inwardly. How awful can a punishment from a child be, he thought. But VILISIA saw the smirk. Her lips curled into a cold smile. It's your turn to be punished now. She tilted her head innocently and said, Why don't we begin with his pinky? Alice paled. Pinky? My pinky finger. VILISIA tapped her chin, feigning thoughtfulness. Oh, and your pinky toe will be cut first, too. His body froze in terror as she continued, her voice sweet but laced with menace. You'll die too fast if they cut off your head first, so they'll take it slow, one finger and toe at a time. Eamon let out a low chuckle. She is without a doubt your direct bloodline. Cassis remained quiet for a moment, his eyes lingering on VILISIA's fierce expression. We don't know that until we test her blood. Yet, as his gaze softened ever so slightly, he murmured to himself, I suppose her eyes slightly resemble mine. They stepped outside, where a commander greeted Cassis with a bow. Your Grace, it appears that the Viscountess and the remaining servants have escaped through the rear entrance. We have also found a child in the storage room where Viscount Threk was hiding. It seems the boy was forced to work as a slave under the Viscount. Eamon stepped forward, gripping an unconscious young man by the arm. VILISIA's eyes widened as she recognized him. Sion, she thought in shock. Cassis observed the situation and spoke with authority. Interrogate him and deal with him when he wakes up. VILISIA's heart pounded. Deal with? Was Cassis ordering Eamon to kill him? But Sion hasn't done anything wrong. Without thinking, she clutched her father's sleeve. And no, you can't kill him. He's just a boy. He hasn't done anything wrong. Cassis turned to look at her, pausing for a moment before smirking. Do you mean that child? Eamon nodded. Yeah, Cassis let out a short chuckle. Who said we were going to kill him? VILISIA blinked. Then, take him to our castle and treat his wounds, Cassis commanded. The carriage set off. Inside, Cassis and VILISIA sat across from each other in silence. VILISIA stole a glance at him but quickly looked away. Cassis broke the silence. I don't even know your name. I'm VILISIA. Mommy called me Vili, she replied hesitantly. Cassis paused at the mention of her mother. Vivian said she had a gift for me. It must have been you. At Castle Valua, the servants whispered amongst themselves. His Grace is finally returning, and with a child who seems to be his daughter. One maid glanced at another. I wonder what our young lady looks like. Lisa, another maid interrupted. You will be fully in charge of taking care of the young lady from this day forth. Bear in mind that she has likely been through many hardships. Serve her accordingly. Lisa straightened and bowed. I understand. A guard announced, His Grace, the Duke, has arrived. The carriage wheels screeched to a halt. Cassis stepped out, and the maids bowed deeply. One of them hesitated before speaking. The Duchess truly has passed away. Her voice wavered as guilt crept in. I can't believe I was so excited about serving the young lady in this situation. Then she saw VILISIA stepping out beside the Duke. The sight of the little girl startled her. She must be the one suffering the most right now. I have to serve her well. Lisa stepped forward and knelt before VILISIA. Lady VILISIA, my name is Lisa, and I will be your dedicated lady's maid from now on. I will serve you in every way I can to make you happy. VILISIA looked at Lisa's bright smile and thought, had Lisa always known how to smile like that? Oh, then again, she never had the chance to. I always made her cry whenever she had something to smile about. A painful memory surfaced, her past self slapping Lisa across the face. You wench. Is it so hard for you to do your job properly? Am I a joke to you? Lisa had bowed in tears. Please forgive me, my lady. VILISIA swallowed hard. I think she used to be bubbly and cheerful in the beginning, but she slowly lost her spirit because of me. It was all my fault. Lisa's voice broke through her thoughts. I assume you must be quite hungry, my lady. Shall I prepare a bath for you first? VILISIA shook her head. I can wash on my own. Lisa giggled. Hee. I understand that you might not be accustomed to having someone help you bathe, but you must get used to it now. VILISIA sighed and relented. As Lisa assisted her in the bath, she noticed the scars on VILISIA's back. Tears welled in her eyes, but she pretended not to notice. My poor lady. After the bath, VILISIA looked refreshed. Lisa asked, Are there any foods you can't eat, my lady? I shall inform the kitchens. The head cook, Hicks, dramatically entered the room. Tada. If I may take a moment to describe these dishes. I have roasted the freshest fish. As for the succulent meat dishes, I have handpicked the liveliest animals from the mountains and grasslands. Each cut was butchered with all my heart and soul. VILISIA nervously took a bite. Oh yeah, this is how the head cook used to be too. Until I showed him how awful I was. Hicks beamed. Come, please have a taste, my lady. She hesitantly chewed on a piece of fish while feeling the entire room staring at her. Please stop staring at me. I feel like I'm going to have indigestion. She swallowed. It's delicious. Hicks's face lit up and he began dancing. I knew it. My cooking is the best. VILISIA grimaced at her past self. I used to throw his cooking on the floor every day and call it disgusting. I was so mean. She glared at the maids, whispering about how adorable she looked while eating. Feeling overwhelmed, she quickly left the dining hall. Outside, she let out a breath. Finally, they're gone. Lisa approached. My lady, I know everything must be unfamiliar and awkward as this is your first time at Castle Valua. VILISIA crossed her arms. No, I'm actually getting goosebumps at how overfamiliar everything is. Lisa smiled. Why don't we explore the castle tomorrow? I shall explain everything to you. You might love this place so much that you'll refuse to get married and want to stay forever. VILISIA's expression darkened. Live here for the rest of my life? I'll probably die before then, even if I wanted to. As Lisa brushed her hair, she asked, Was today the first time you've seen your father, my lady? VILISIA hesitated. He was always away, obsessed with bringing mommy back to life. So yes, it does feel like the first time. Lisa's voice softened. You probably don't know this, but His Grace has never stayed in the castle since the Duchess left. He traveled to every corner of the empire and beyond, searching for her. He loves her to that extent. I'm certain he will care for you immensely as well. VILISIA clenched her fists. You're wrong, Lisa. Put that thought in your mind's garbage can. Just thinking about how many times I've died because of his obsession makes me so angry. Lisa tilted her head. After all, His Grace is like the male lead of a romance novel. VILISIA groaned. No, you're wrong again, Lisa. He isn't the male lead. He's the villain. Lisa chuckled. I feel like I'm in a romance novel myself. And I'm excited to see what kind of male lead you'll meet when you grow up. VILISIA scoffed. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm the daughter of a villain. She thought,